Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be showing you guys the easiest way to make a palazzo trouser. So I've gone ahead to mark out my line, which is going to serve as my waistline. So from the waistline I'll be measuring out 8 inches, which is going to be my hip line. So after measuring that out, I am going to draw a straight line marking out my hip line. So after getting my hip line, I am going to determine my flap. And to get your flap, the easiest way to get it is by sitting on a stool and measuring from your waist down to the stool. Wherever that is stopped, that is your flap line. That is the measurement you use for your flap. For me, it is 12.5 inches. I added extra half an inch for ease, making it 13 inches. But for these trousers, I'll be measuring out 11 inches flap. This is because I'll be adding a 2 inches waistband later, making everything 13 inches in total. But for now, I am measuring out an 11 inches flap. So I've drawn a straight line to mark out my flap. Now after the flap, I am going to get the full length of this trouser. For me, the full length is going to be 45 inches. I won't be adding a sewing allowance, a hemming allowance to this. This is because I'll also be adding a 2 inches waistband later. So I'm going to measure out exactly 45 inches. Sorry it didn't show on this clip because my table is too small and I didn't know it wasn't recording up to that part. So I marked out 45 inches on the bottom of this trouser, which is going to be my full length. So right now I'm labeling the lines. The first line is the waistline, the second line is the hip line, the third line is the flap line, which is also going to serve as the lap line. This is where I'll be making my lap measurements. So right now I'll be placing my body measurement starting from my hip line. So to get my hip, I'll be dividing my hip by 4, which is 46 inches divided by 4 plus 2 inches allowance. And for my lap, I'll be measuring the biggest part of my lap, which is close to my crotch. Now whatever I get, I'll be dividing it by 2 and adding extra 3 inches for allowance. So I'll be recording it there. Now I'm going to join the hip measurements, connect the hip line to the flap point, which is the thighs also. So I'll be connecting it and then drawing it upwards to join the waistline. Now after that, I am going to mark out my hip. So I'm starting from the left side, which is the line that connects from the flap to the hip. So from there, to get my waist, I'll be dividing my waist by 4 inches plus 2 inches allowance. So I'll be marking it there. Everything gave me 12 inches. Now from the line there, I am going to join the waist measurements to the hip line and down to the flap line, and then I'm going to draw a straight line from the flap down to the bottom of the trousers. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the crotch area. From the place where I place the lap measurements, I am also going to join it down to the bottom of the trousers. And I forgot to tell you guys, this fabric was folded into 4 pieces, so I am cutting both the front side and the back side together. Now from the bottom of the trousers, because I don't want it to be too wide, so what I'm going to do is that from the edge of the line which I already drew, I am going to measure out 2 inches on both sides of this trouser, and then from that bottom part I am going to join it upwards, draw a straight line upwards to meet the flap point. I'll be doing this for both sides, so I'm going to connect this line from the bottom upwards to meet the place where the lap point started. You can do this using a ruler, or you can use a freehand. Whichever one that works for you is also good. So I'm about to join the line, the horizontal line, down to the point where the hip, to the flap point. And I'll be doing the same thing for both sides. Now after this, I am going to cross out that first line I drew because I no longer need it. So I'll be working with the second line I drew. So after this, well, our trousers are done. So what we're going to do is just cut it out. Remember that this fabric was folded into 4, so you're cutting both the front and the back side. So right now I am done cutting out the trouser. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to bring out two parts of this trouser, which is going to be the front pieces, so that I can cut out the pockets. So to cut out the pocket, I'll be measuring 2 inches from the waistline, which is the width. I'll be using a 2 inches width and a 6 inches length or depth. Now after measuring this 6 inches, I am going to connect the point from the waistline to the 6 inches, which is going to serve as my pocket. You can do this using a freehand or you can use a French curve. Remember, you are doing this to only 2 pieces out of the 4 pieces of trousers that you cut. You are only going to be cutting out pockets on 2 pieces, which is going to serve as the front piece. So after joining these lines, this point, you are going to cut it out. So this is going to be your pocket. Now I've gone ahead to cut out my pockets, the fabric I will be using for my pockets. So for this pocket, I measured out a 7.5 inches width and a 12 inches length. Is 7.5 inches in width and 12 inches in length. So after that, I will be taking 2 pieces of the pocket. The pocket, will be cutting it out in 4 pieces, and then I'll be taking 2 pieces of this pocket, right sides facing each other, and I'll be bringing the front part of the trousers, and I'm going to place the pocket on top of this fabric that I already cut out to be used for the pocket. Now I'm going to cut it out. Now after cutting it out, I am going to take one of the pocket that was curved, that has a curve, and I'm going to stitch it down, after which I will iron it down. You can iron it down or you can top stitch it. Now after top stitching or ironing, I'm going to bring another part of the pocket, not the part that was curved, one of the pieces that wasn't curved, after which I am going to be matching the pockets together and top stitching it on the top to hold it together. Now look closely how I am matching this pocket. Now after top stitching it on the top, I am going to top stitch it by the side by ½ an inch, just a little. You can either top stitch this or you can just pin it down. I prefer to top stitch. Now I've gone ahead to top stitch and iron everything down. I also added my darts, and to get my darts, I measured my nipple to nipple measurements, which is 4.5 inches. So from the flap line, I got 4.5 inches, and the length of the dart is 4 inches. So I stitched it down. Now remember the 2 inches which we cut out for the pocket, we are going to be adding it back, plus ½ an inch which we used to sew down the pocket, making it 2.5 inches. So after marking out 2.5 inches, we are going to cut out the excess. So after doing that, I am going to be turning the pocket backwards and I'm going to curve this pocket. This is optional, you can sew it straight, but I just prefer to curve it. So I'm going to curve it from the inside part, not the part on the side, from the inside. I'm going to curve this out using a chalk, after which I'll cut it out and then sew it in, fold it in and sew. Now when cutting this out, be careful so that you do not cut your fabric. Now I'll be folding these two pockets in order for it to be neat. So I'll be folding it in, pin it down, and then go and sew it down. I'll be doing this round the whole pocket. Now after pinning and sewing this down, I'll be bringing the two parts of the front pieces. Remember, you do this after you've done both pockets for the front. So I'll be bringing the two parts of the front pieces and I'll be joining the flap. I prefer to double stitch just to be on the safer side. Now we are going to the back. So this is me adding the dart. To determine the dart, I'll be using my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4.5 inches. So I'm marking out 4.5 inches. The length of this dart is going to be 4 inches in length, so, or in depth. So this is me marking out 4 inches, after which I'll be sewing this dart in by half an inch. Now after sewing this dart in, I'm going to do that for both sides of the back, and then after that I'll be bringing the two pieces of the back and I'll be joining the flap line. Now I've gone ahead to sew down my two pieces of the back. Now I'm going to bring the front and the back pieces together. I'll be joining them from the crotch out. From the crotch, I'll join one side of the crotch down to the bottom of the pants, and then I'll also do that for the other side. Now I've gone ahead to sew it down. Now we'll be closing the size of this trouser. So to determine what you'll be closing the size with, you'll be putting your waist measurement. So for me, my waist measurement is 39 inches. So I'll be from the center point of this trousers, I'll be measuring 39 inches divided by 4. Whatever it gives me, that is what I'll be marking on this trouser. So after determining my waist point, I had 1 inch. So I'll be using that 1 inch to sew this trouser down from the waist down to the bottom of the trousers. This is because this is a palazzo pant, so it is a free pant. It doesn't really need to be fitted, so you do not really have to stress yourself about getting the nail points or the hip line. Please ignore that line there, it was a mistake. So I'll be sewing this down from the waistline down to the bottom of the pants. This is for one side of the trouser. Then for the other side, I'll be bringing out my zipper allowance. So for the zipper length, my zipper length is going to be 10 inches, but then I marked 8 inches here because I'll be adding 2 inches waistband later, making everything 8 inches in total. So I'll be marking out the same 1 inch that I used to sew down the other side of the pants. I'll be doing that for this side and sewing it down from that point that I marked down to the bottom of this trousers. Now after doing that, I've gone ahead to sew that down. After doing that, I'll be adding my waistband. I went ahead to cut out my waistband. My waistband is 5 inches. I also went ahead to iron in a gum stain or interface on it so that it will be thick. So my waistband is 5 inches in width, and for the length of my waistband, I added 5 inches to my waistline, to my waist. So that was how I got the length. It's better to work with excess than not having. So my waistband on fold will be 2.5 inches, which after sewing it down with half an inch, I'll be left with 2 inches. So I've gone to pin this down to to the waist of my trouser, and after which I'll be sewing it down round. So after sewing it all round, I'll be going now to measure out the waist of my trouser in order to determine the full waist of the trouser. So after measuring it down, I had 20.5 inches, and for my waistline, my waist is 39, divide it by 2 and it will be 19.5, so which means I'll be minusing 1 inch from this waist now. So from the waist, I'll be taking out 1 inch, which will also serve as the zipper allowance. So I'll be marking out that 1 inch down to the part where I joined the trousers together, after which I'll be adding the zipper. After adding the zipper, I am going to go ahead to hem the bottom of this trousers, and that will be it for the whole trouser. So I've gone ahead to add my zipper and the trouser is ready.